Everyone, this is Brian here. Thank you for joining today's webinar where we'll be talking about setting up Desk.com. So I'm the onboarding and training specialist here at Desk, and it's my role to create content for new customers so that they can learn how to not only set up but also use Desk. Today our guest is Barb. Barb, do you want to give a brief introduction of yourself?
Yes, I will. Thanks, Brian. So hi guys, my name is Barb Tassa. I'm on the customer success team here at Desk. So over the course of the next week or so, you'll probably be hearing from me. But basically what I do is I work with our customers who are trying to configure their support processes in Desk. So what we'll do today is basically cover what that looks like from a new customer point of view.
All right, thanks, Barb. So before we actually get started, just a few housekeeping items. Today's training portion of the webinar will last about 45 minutes, where Bob will take us through various topics and items. During the actual training portion, if you guys do have questions, please feel free to type them into the GoToWebinar questions panel, and we'll be monitoring those throughout the training. We also will have a dedicated Q&A session towards the end of the training, so feel free to ask away at that time as well. Some of the questions that we do get during the training, we might hold to the end of the Q&A session, just if we feel that your questions would benefit kind of the larger group. As always, our session will be recorded, so if you want to maybe watch the webinar and simultaneously set up your own Desk site, we'll send that out. Also, if you can't stay with us for the entire time, we will send the full session out. All right, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Barb, and she'll take us through the setup.
All right, thanks so much, Brian. So since most of you have just recently purchased Desk, you probably have a few questions on how to configure it, what are the best practices, and other questions along those lines. So today what I'll do is actually take you through a setup journey that covers a lot of that information. So specifically, we'll talk about, number one, key questions that you'd want to be thinking about as a team when you're setting up Desk. Second, I'll go through an actual setup for a bicycle shop. Once we've covered the basic setup, we'll go into step 3, which is discussing some of the advanced features that you can use with Desk. In step 4, we'll recap everything that we've talked about, and then step 5, we'll give you plenty of resources and talk about next steps that you can take with your own configuration. And as Brian said, we will have plenty of time for Q&A at the end, but if there are any pressing questions during the presentation, please feel free to ask it. If something doesn't make sense or you want a little bit more clarity, we're definitely happy to stop and answer those questions. All right, so without further ado, when I start thinking about my Desk setup and working with our new customers, I like to kind of pose the question about what kind of fidelity do you want to propose to your customers when they first start communicating with you in Desk. So, sometimes you may want to launch with a basic setup that allows you to quickly answer, for example, just customer email inquiries. And so that's sort of like the quick getting from A to B version. On the other hand, you may want to take your time and create a really customized experience for your customers before they even start interacting with you on Desk. And in this version, it could be that you've enabled a full support center, you have email, but as well as other social media channels that your customers can use to communicate with you through Desk. So that choice of setup fidelity really is up to you. Today for this webinar, I'll focus on that A to B version so you can see what a setup actually looks like. And before I touch anything in Desk, I typically ask myself or the customers that I'm working with 5 key questions. Firstly, what are the types of customers that you have? Why are your customers contacting you? What methods or channels do your customers use to contact you? How many customer inquiries do you get each day, and who's actually responsible for handling those inquiries? And lastly, what are the main pain points or problems that you are trying to resolve with Desk? So let's say I run a local bike shop called Bay Cycles, and I'm going to walk through these 5 questions with my team. So, speaking with my colleagues at this bike shop, we've come to the realization that there are 2 types of customers: cyclists who buy my products and vendors who supply my shop with these products. The main problem that I'm facing is a lack of visibility into why customers are contacting our shop, and I truly don't have a great way to provide data or reports about our support efforts to the management team. So that's the type of stuff that I'm looking to resolve with Desk. Now, I further discovered that talking to my team that with our cyclist group that contacts us, they contact us for 3 main reasons: bike sales, service, and events. The bike types, they inquire about our cruisers, commuters, and road bikes. And for events, they ask about our Friday fun rides, monthly 20K rides, and annual races. Cyclists are typically contacting us by email and phone. They have a dedicated email address, which is baycycles101@gmail.com, and these inquiries are almost exclusively handled by the staff. The second set of customers that we have are the vendors. And when vendors contact us, they are usually contacting us about new products, order confirmations, and promotions. These are the bike models that they supply our shop. And in terms of contact, they usually email us, but we also get some phone calls. And vendors likewise have a dedicated email address that they contact us with, and that's baycycles101plusvendors@gmail.com. In this case, the vendor inquiries are only handled by the management team. So one of the things you may be thinking about, why do I think of vendors as customers? Well, one of the things I really want to do is make sure that I'm responding to my vendors in a timely fashion, just as I am with my cyclists. So that is why I'm going to track everything in Desk. So based on these questions, what I'm going to do now is talk about the data model that I can create with this information. So let's say, kind of thinking about this, I have a customer type. If it's a cyclist, I may want to track the event type as a contact reason, and specifically the event type that I get most frequently asked is the Friday fun ride. For example, where and when the ride starts, where it ends, how long it is. And then if a vendor contacts me, they may be wanting to tell us about a new promotion that they're having on Mission bikes, and specifically the Revalencia model. And so taking all this together, for my bike shop, these contact reasons, customer type, event type information, everything that's highlighted in blue, these main contact reasons are what I'll be taking and storing in what are called custom fields. So that way I have a better way to not only manage the information, but at a later point, actually report on these particular contact reasons. The next thing that I also want to talk to you guys about is our kind of a bird's eye view of how the Desk system works. So if you imagine our customer Josh, if Josh sends an email to our bike shop, Desk enables me to process that email based on its unique attributes. And by unique attributes, I mean anything that is unique to that specific interaction. So that could be the sender's email, which email address they're sending that to, what they say in the subject line or the body, or anything else that makes that interaction unique. So once Desk can pick up on a unique attribute of that particular email, I can do things to it through the rules engine. So I can automate, for example, who it's assigned to, if it has certain labels added, or anything else that helps me categorize and more or less automate some of the organization of those cases. In one case, I could be assigning this case to Emily, one of my staff members, because staff members are usually the group that handle most of my cyclist emails. And so when this case is assigned to Emily, she can reply to that email directly, and use those custom fields to capture information like the contact reason and customer type. And she can also use things like macros to speed up her reply to the customer. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So when Emily finally sends that email out to Josh, Desk can also apply a specific look and feel to that email through what are called email reply templates. And that could be as simple as adding a logo or doing a very thorough branding. So at every touch point, your customer gets a consistent brand experience. All right, so now that I'm prepared with my data model and have an understanding of how Desk works at a high level, I want to give you guys a specific task that I'll do now to set up my bike shop in Desk. So first, what I'm going to do is just limit my contact channels to email. I can turn on the other channels at any point, but for now I'm just going to limit it to email. Second, I'm going to create a couple of custom fields to reflect all those categories that we talked about, like customer type and contact reason. Then I can actually organize how they're laid out in what are called next-gen case layouts. In step 3, what I'll be doing is adding a colleague into Desk to help me test out the configurations that I'm making, and I'll also create a couple groups. I typically will add only one person or maybe 2 people initially just to help for the testing part, and then once I'm done everything, I'll add the rest of the team members at the end. In step 4, what I'll be doing is leveraging that Desk automation, the rules mechanisms, to create specific inbound rules that will correctly route the cyclist and vendor emails to the right management and staff teams. In step 5, what I'll do is create a filter to actually show cases in the specific area for my team. In step 6, what I'll do is create an auto acknowledgement that essentially sends a quick email to my customer letting them know that we have received their email. And then we're going to create a macro, which is essentially a canned message that my agents can use to make their replies faster. In step 8, I'm going to enable some notifications for new cases so that if my staff are not working in Desk all the time, they'll get an email notification to their inbox letting them know that there is a new inquiry. In step 9, we'll do a lot of testing, and that's where you guys will actually have a chance to participate as well. And then finally, when I'm done all my testing, that's typically when I add the remaining team members and actually connect the real support email address where customers are emailing me. All right, so let's actually jump into Desk now and start working on those 10 steps. So as an administrator, if you've already started to look at your setup area, this is what you're looking at is the administrator view. You have control over everything related to your cases here on these tabs. There's also a settings icon here that can change the site-wide settings. So today I'll be spending most of the time here in across dashboard, team channels, and cases, but just so you know that some settings are available in this gear icon for you. Now let's also take a look at what the agent view looks like. When you first log into Desk and you click on that next-gen agent view, you'll see what are called filters on the left-hand side. So those are essentially, you can think of them as folders, but a case can be in multiple filters. So these are the filters that surface certain types of cases. This area here is the inbox where all the new cases are going to be sent. And then if I click onto a case, I see the interactions in the center and the case details on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, I see customer information as well as any company information. And in case you're wondering, do I have a support center with my Desk site? The answer is usually when you first create Desk for the first time, it's your Desk URL, and if you go to that, it will look something like this. So this is the out-of-the-box support center. So if I go back to my step 1, what I'll do is go and turn off all of the other channels. So the only channel that is there for my customers is the email channel. And one other way you can check that is going back to the agent inbox. This plus button is what allows me to create a new case manually. If I create that right now, I will see both a phone and email option. So I'm going to turn off the phone option, and what I should only see is the email option afterwards. So to manage my channels, I'll go into admin, into the channels section. In the support center, what I'll do is go to advanced settings and turn off this portal, hit update. Email, I'm going to keep on, so I'm not going to change anything here now. I'll check to see if chat is enabled or disabled. So it is disabled right now. Phone we know is on, so I'll have to turn that off. And then let's just double check how Twitter, advanced, so that's off. And then Facebook, advanced settings, and that's off as well. So now, just as confirmation, if I refresh my agent view, I should only see an email case come up. And the same thing, if I go back to the portal and I hit refresh, that should be not available. All right, so the first step is done. I have just enabled only the email channel, and I can move on to step 2, which is creating my custom fields. So I'm going to navigate into the cases section. And in the cases section, on the left-hand side, I have a bunch of options. The first thing I'll go to is the cases section. And under custom fields, I'll create a new custom field for, let's see which ones I have here, customer type. The name of the field is what's going to be visible for my agents, and the key is the value that's stored in the database. I typically name them the same thing, but just connect them with an underscore. The data type I want to select in this case is a list because I have a predefined set of options, which is basically just cyclist and vendor. So now that I've created that, I actually have the other ones in here like contact reason. So all I'll do is just turn them on. The one other custom field that I'm going to add in a little bit is called the email source. So one of the things I mentioned to you guys earlier is that I have different email addresses for my cyclists and vendors. So what I actually want to do is store that as a custom field as well. So let's call this email source. It's likewise going to be a list type. And the first email is daycycles101 at gmail.com. And the second one is for my vendors, which is daycycles101 plus vendors at gmail.com. Great. So let's go see what those custom fields look like. I go back into my case area. I hit refresh to make sure the changes took effect. And now I can see on the right-hand side, I not only have those standard fields like status and priority that I saw previously, but I also have these new custom fields that I just enabled in Desk. Now, the one thing I'm looking at is I don't actually need the language, and I'm not sure if I like this order. I would want to show customer type first as my custom field option. So what I can do is actually go back into the admin and reorder how these custom fields appear. So I go to admin, and I'll click on Next Gen Case Layouts. Next Gen Case Layouts are a way to actually showcase these custom fields in a specific order, and you can create different custom field layouts for different teams that need to see slightly different information. So I'll call this one my staff case layout, and I'm going to remove the language by hitting just the garbage bin, so it just gets added back into the standard fields area. And I'm going to expand the custom fields, drag to the page customer type, contact reason. I'll ask about event type and site type. Now I want to make these actually full width, so I can click on the pencil, and that way I can make it go across the entire custom field section. Great. So before I do anything else, I want to add myself into this particular custom field layout, so that way I can see the changes, and I'll click Add, and that's going to save and add me to this custom field layout. So let's go see what that looks like. When I hit refresh, I should see all these changes now in effect. Great, and so we see that. So I no longer have the language field, And I have now customer type, contact reason, event type, and bike type. So that's exactly what I want to do. So now what I'll do is go into my team settings in step 3, and I'll create groups, and I will add another colleague into Desk. So let's call this Bob Smith. Smith, let's just call him, I'm going to make up a fake email address here, so actually I'll just put my email address here. Otherwise, the reason I'm actually putting my own email address is because it's going to actually send a notification to that email that a new account has been created. So assuming this is just another agent, what I'll do is select the role to be agent, meaning that they're not going to have access to the administrator area, but rather they're going to have access just to that agent console for replying to customers. And I'm going to add this Bob Smith person to the staff team. All right, and then now I'm going to check for groups. So I've already created my staff and management groups, and it's pretty easy. So you can just click on new group name, give it a name, and you can directly assign the individuals, or you can click into the group itself and then click the name of the people to be added or taken away from a specific group. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is start using the rules engine. So going back into cases, I'm going to go into this rules area and start thinking about categorizing all of those potential emails that I'm going to get from my customers that are cyclists and also customers that are vendors. So what I'll do is click Add New Rule, and let's call this Cyclist Emails. The interaction type is just going to be for emails. I'll click Add. And in this case, let's walk over what this rules engine actually looks like. So I first have to tell Desk what types of rule conditions I want to look at in order to take some kind of action based on a case meeting those rule conditions. So in this case, my rule conditions are that I want this case to just be new for the first time. I don't need to run this rule every single time. So by selecting case status is new, this particular rule that I'm creating is only going to run one time. Then I'm going to choose the any conditions because sometimes my customers will use the email to field, but in other times they'll actually just copy us. So I want to capture both cases. And this one is for cyclist emails, so I will be looking to see if they email daycycles101@gmail.com or if they copy the email line instead of hitting the to line. So now this reads, when the case status is new and one of these two things is true, either the email to or email CC has daycycles101 on it, then I want the rule condition to be that I'm going to assign it. So I'm going to set the case assigned group to the staff team, meaning that the staff team are now going to get assigned this particular email case. And the second thing I'm going to do for reporting purposes is I'm going to set the case email source, that custom field I just created, to capture that as the daycycles101 Gmail email address for cyclists. I'm going to enable this rule, click Update, and now I will see it added to my list of inbound rules. Now to pair this visually, so right now I'm not going to see anything happen, right, because I don't have anybody emailing me, but also I have no way to visually show to my team whether a cyclist email came in. So what I'm going to do is actually create a filter to showcase then cyclist emails only. So I'm going to click Add Filter, and let's call this Cyclist Emails. And in this filter, I see something that looks kind of similar to that rule condition page or the rule creation screen that we just looked at earlier. So I have my all condition and I have my any condition. The one thing that's missing is rule action. So filters don't do anything. All they really do is just surface certain types of information. And in this case, I'm asking Desk to surface cases where their email source has been set to the cyclist emails or the daycycles101@gmail.com. And the only other thing I'm going to change here is the priority sort. So I typically like to see cases when they were last received and in the descending order. So the most recent cases are going to be at the top of that filter. Permission to this filter, I have a couple options here. So eventually I see this only being relevant to the staff team. So I may want to, at some point, make the visibility for this filter only to staff. But for testing purposes, I'm going to make this visible to everybody, and I'm going to click Enable for this filter. So let's go see what that looks like to my agent team. So if I go back into Desk, now I see my list of filters, the cyclist emails filter on the left-hand side. Now, just as I expected, there's nothing in there, which is fine. But once I do start getting cyclist emails in here, I expect them to be shown in this filter. So let's do the same thing for our vendors. I'm going to create a very similar inbound rule to specifically categorize vendor emails. So I can use the shortcut and just copy this rule, click on it, and edit it. Call it vendor emails. And the things I'm going to change here are the any conditions. So rather than looking at base cycles 101 plus Gmail, I'll look at plus vendors on both the to and CC line. I'm going to change the rule action to set case assign group to the management team and the case email source to base cycles 101 plus vendors. I enable this rule and I click update. I'm going to do the same thing in terms of creating a corresponding filter to showcase vendor cases only. So I'll go to the cyclist emails filter, duplicate that, and then slightly modify it for my vendors. In this case, I'm checking that the email source was set to base cycles 101 plus vendors at gmail.com. The default sort will stay the same as receive date. And for now, likewise, I'll keep this visible to all users, but at a later point, I may want to just make this visible to the management team only. So let's click all users, enable the filter, click update. And now when I go back into my agent view, I see that I have two new filters, both the cyclist and vendor emails. So the next thing I'm going to do is go into step number 6, and that's enabling the auto acknowledgement. So the auto acknowledgement is that notification that my customer gets to let them know that they have, they've successfully sent in an email to us and we've received it. And the great thing is this rule is actually created for you in Desk. So it'll look like this, it's just turned off. So if you read this, what this says, if the case status is new and, let's click into it so it's easier to read. If the case status is new and the hours since last auto acknowledgement are greater than or equal to 24, then the rule action is to send the email auto acknowledgement that has a system default theme. So all this is saying is that only send this to cases that are new for the first time. Don't send it if the customer sends a follow-up email. And I don't want to have any email wars with out-of-office replies, so I usually will put a 24-hour filter on that as well. When I click enable, what's going to happen is that every time a customer now emails me, they will get an auto acknowledgement response. Okay, so let's also now go into a little bit more productivity with macros. And macros are great because you can create as many as you want for all of those common questions that you will get from your customers. But beyond just having a canned reply, you can actually do a lot more with them. So let's look at this one that I've created for those common questions about the events, the Friday night fun rides. So what I can do is add the quick reply, which simply adds a canned response that my agent doesn't have to type every single time, and it can be customized to even include the first name of the customer. What you're seeing highlighted here in these two curly braces is called a liquid variable. And liquid variables are a great way to dynamically pull information that Desk saves for you. So that could include like the customer's first name, last name, their full name, their email address, and anything else that you'd save either in a standard or into a custom field. So in this case, I'm just looking to pull the customer first name. And the other things I'm going to do is actually set the custom field. So the event type, I'm going to make it a Friday fun ride. I know that definitely this is going to be coming from to cyclists rather than vendors. And then I can, of course, set the contact reason as well because they're emailing me about events. Similar to the filters, I can have macros visible only to certain teams, but in this case, I'm just going to make this visible to everybody. When I click Enable and I go update this case, what I can then see, let's go look at what that looks like. So if I create a new case, I'll put myself in here. To create a case, let's try to use that macro and see what that looks like. So in the reply area, I have this use macro option, and I'm going to have to actually refresh to make sure I enable this macro. Okay, let's double check that. Use macro, there it is. So cyclist event, Friday night fun ride. I'll click that, and what it does is it enters all of the information into my reply area, including the name of the customer. On the right-hand side, I see that the customer type, contact reason, and event type were set for me. So that's the power of a macro. You can use it to automate a lot of those tedious and frequently occurring tasks. All right, so I'm going to do one more thing from a productivity point of view, and that is enabling the notification for my agents if they're not in Desk. So I go back to Rules, Inbound Interaction, and similar to the auto-acknowledgement rule, this new interaction notification is already created for you, so all you have to do is enable it. And just to read what this does, all this rule says is that it's just going to send you a notification with a system default theme, and it's going to happen all of the time, regardless of what the status of the case is. So anytime something comes in, you'll get a notification. All right, so that is pretty much it, and now it's time to test. So I hope you guys will join me here. To send a test email, you can actually use this email here, support at zzz-baycycles2.desk-mail.com. So Brian's actually going to put that into the GoToWebinar chat window, so you can just copy and paste that into an email and send me an email. And while you guys are sending me those emails, I want to talk about a few different ways that you can get cases into Desk. So one of the ways is actually using this support email address. Out of the box, Desk has this support email address for you, and you can use it. So as you guys will see if you email me, this is a live email address, so you can actually have it enabled and use that if you don't have your own email addresses. The second way is to connect your email through IMAP, so you can just add a new mailbox and connect that. And the third way to do that is by using what's called email forwarding. So you can do that from the dashboard page and click here, the email forwarding guide will take you through a couple steps. So email forwarding is the one method we actually recommend because it has the fastest, it sends cases into Desk much faster than IMAP. And so all it does is you can take either your Google Mail or your Outlook Mail and forward that into your Desk support email address. And you can, of course, retain the copies of the original emails in your inbox. But that is the method we recommend, and this handy step-through wizard will help you set it up in less than 5 minutes. All right, so let's just see if anybody has had a chance to send me a test email here. So let's go into my inbox. So sometimes it does take a minute or so to get an email, so we'll just wait for that for a second. So while we're waiting for those emails, one of the things I do want to talk about is case statuses and how you can actually customize your inbox view. So what you're looking at here is where basically what happens where all your cases come in. I can actually change the layout of this particular inbox by clicking on this vertical ellipsis here on the right-hand side. So a couple of things I can change are making the views a little bit wider if I want to see more information about the case. And I can also add more information. So I typically like to see the case ID, and I don't typically use priority too much, so I'll usually unselect that. But I do want to see, let's say, the receive date, and I think that's it for now. So let's click off of that. And I can actually organize this. So I'll drag this over to the left-hand side. So I may want to, oops, that's the wrong one. I want to grab the case ID, drag that to the left side. Why am I not grabbing the right thing here? Okay, let me just make this the right size. Let's refresh the screen. Okay, so let's try this again. Let's drag some of these columns around. So some days it works better than others, but what I'm trying to show you is that you can actually customize and move these fields around to whatever layout works for your team. And you know, it's one of those things where depending on the information that you're trying to see, you can move them around. The other thing you can do is, it's pretty handy, instead of clicking into a case to actually see all the information, you can actually hover over it and see the entire interaction that the customer sent in. And likewise, I can actually take an action step from this hover. So I can click to open it in view mode, and view mode is the read-only mode, meaning that I'm not actually going to be making any changes. So I have this read-only option. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's nothing that actually is selectable. So this is an important distinction. When you are opening something in read-only mode, it is, the reason I usually will use it is to just look at the information. I may not want to change the status of a case, and so I'll do that. And then likewise, I will, let me see what else I will do. I do also like to see any notes. So typically I will have notes in my cases. So if I hover over it, I can actually see all the note interactions, which I don't have right here. But let's reply to some of these cases. So when I click into this case, so this is the interaction. Thank you, Chad, for sending that in. On the right-hand side, you will see those standard case details and then the custom fields that I created. So nothing is set right now because ultimately, you're just emailing my support email address rather than the Gmail one that I will be connecting later on. But I can still use things like the macros I created. So another shortcut you can use for macros is to use a double pound sign and then start typing ahead to get the word or the entire macro that you want entered in. Okay, it's freezing up on me a little bit, so let me refresh. All right, let me try this again. So click macro, enter, and there we go. So there's my macro. So it says, hi, Chad. So it's pre-filled your name in for me, and then it has the entire reply, plus the the custom fields on the right-hand side set, as I showed previously. So I'll send and update this case to you, and so you should get that reply. Awesome. So going back to the case statuses, now we see a couple different statuses. The first one that's in solid blue is called the new status. So a case can be new only one time, and that's really handy. So you know if nobody's clicked on that, that's going to continue to stay in the new status. If I've clicked on it or if I've continued to work on it, I will see it in the open status. And then what I just did right now was reply back to Chad, and that changes the case to a pending status. So anything that you see in the pending status is, I'd like to think of it at the customer, so the ball is in the customer's court to reply back to me. And the last case, the last status that I have the ability to control, so let's reply back to Brian in this case. And I'm going to use the send, update, and resolve button here on the bottom right. So when I click that, the case status is going to change to resolve. And if I click back into the inbox, I won't actually see it here because this filter doesn't show me resolved cases, but I can go into my all cases view and then see that the email that I sent to Brian is now green and it shows up as resolved. So that's how case statuses work. All right, so that is basically the general setup to get cases flowing into Desk. Now let's go back into the presentation and talk about some of the next things that you can do with Desk. So think back to Josh. You know, Josh emails me normally, but rather than only offering him an email option, I may want to offer him a support center option. So the support center is a collection of articles, frequently asked questions that hopefully will help my customer answer all of their questions and not contact me. So this is really handy if you, let's say, have thousands of customers, or if you just have a lot of the same type of questions the customers are asking, or perhaps you have a community of users that prefer to actually answer their own question. The support center is a great way to go. The second thing you can do from your support center is actually enable the contact form. And the contact form is sort of like the email, basically the email channel is slightly different. So here onto my contact form, I can add any number of custom fields and ask Josh to actually tell me why he's contacting me. So I can, bring up like contact reason or event type, any of those custom fields that I created previously. And so when Josh were to submit this particular contact form from the support center, it will still get routed into Desk. He can still get the auto acknowledgement, and I can change the theme and the branding of it to whatever I want to. It can still be routed to Emily, my colleague who handles cyclist emails. And so when she goes back and forth with Josh, let's say a number of times on a more complicated issue, at the end of those interactions, I can also enable what's called customer satisfaction. The CSAT survey is essentially a quick, it helps you get the quick pulse of your customers on how they think you're doing with support. And so let's show you how that works. It's a pretty cool feature. So let's go back into Desk. So what I'll do is go into my cases area, and all the way at the bottom here, I'll see customer satisfaction. When I click customer satisfaction, it shows me that it's not enabled, so I'm going to enable that right now. And this is the feedback question that comes out of the box. How satisfied were you with the resolution? The feedback frequency, I have two options. So I can send it with every resolution or with a first resolution. So why do we have that selection here? Number one, a case can be reopened. So even though I wrote back to Brian and I hit send, update, and resolve, if Brian emails me back and says, hey, actually you didn't answer my question, the case is going to go back into an open status. And then if I reply back to Brian and I resolve it for real, it's going to be another resolution. So the choice that Desk is allowing me to make is, do I want it to only go the first time I resolve something or every single time I resolve a case? I can also choose between 2 and 4 happy faces, and if I want, I can ask one more additional follow-up question. All right, so I'll hit update on that, and I'll go back into my case view here. I'll just hit refresh. Okay, so I'll go back to my inbox, and I'm actually going to reply back to Chad. Let's do second reply, and then I'll hit send and resolve. So now when Chad gets that email back, he should see those 4 smiley faces that he can click on. And feel free to, Chad, if you're still listening, feel free to click on that and send it back. So that way you can see what it looks like when a customer does reply back into Desk with CSAT enabled. So while we wait for that, CSAT is a really great option. We definitely encourage you to use it. It's out of the box with Desk. There's very little configuration required. And the great thing about it is not only will you just have that sentiment from customers on an ongoing basis, but you can actually report on it. So let's say there are certain types of cases are more challenging for your team to resolve. You can also look at to see what is the customer satisfaction to, for each of those case types. So let's let's go back into the presentation in the meanwhile. Okay. All right, so let's recap all the things that we've talked about today. First of all, we spent a lot of time kind of thinking about what our business looks like. We talked about the 5 questions, and I hope I kind of explained to you guys that taking that time to talk with your team and figure out what you really want to capture is going to make your life a lot easier. Because going into Desk and configuring it is probably going to take less time than it is actually to think about all the things that you want to track. The second thing we did was we created some rules. We assigned cases to groups and agents, and then we also created macros. We tested getting cases into Desk, and we started thinking about what are the things that we can do beyond the simple setup. And then just another point about testing, there are, anytime you set up a new configuration, you will probably want to spend more time testing it to make sure it does hold up under different conditions. All right, so here is a summary of all the things we talked about. We'll provide this to you after the call. So these are the 10 steps that we did, plus a reason to implement if you are considering it, and then a Desk article link, so that way if you need more instructions and you want it in writing, you'll be able to reference this Desk link. If you're starting to think already about advanced feature setup, here are a couple things that I can point you to. For security, you may want to think about 2-factor authentication, single sign-on. You may want to think about case permissions for agents, or how they can reply, whether it's just from Desk or perhaps you want to allow that in their emails as well. If you are planning on having multiple teams that need to see different things beyond just case next-gen case layouts that we looked at, you may want to look at the different roles and permissions, and as well as custom roles and permissions. There's a lot of information about advanced rules and how you can use more automation in your workflow, how to customize the look and feel of messages, how to start customizing your support center and all the things you can do with it. Business insights and reporting is a whole other topic to itself. So once you have enough cases, you'll want to start really pulling reports to reflect what's going on in your support. And then lastly, Desk Connect. So if you are using Salesforce, you may want to sync in Desk cases into Salesforce. So we have a lot of topic coverage on that as well for Desk Connect. Lastly, training and resources. Desk.com has an entire support center. So we use our own product to host all of our support articles. So if you go to support.desk.com, you will see plenty of written articles as well as a video support center. So you can see webinars and specific topics covered. And if you want to kind of get an idea of what else you can do with your support center, check out this link. It points to a few of our customer support centers as well. Of course, you're probably going to have some questions, so if you want to talk to our team, please do feel free to contact us. We're available by email, which is support@desk.com, as well as by phone. All right, so hopefully we provide you with a lot of resources to start thinking about your desk and starting to prepare for your launch. But of course, we definitely want to hear your questions, so let's jump into that now.
All right, thanks, Barb. Once again, if you do have questions, please feel free to type them into the GoToWebinar questions panel, and thank you for the questions that you guys have asked in the training. Looks like we have one here. Can you change the images of the smiley face? So I'm guessing he's talking about CSAT.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would probably bucket that under the advanced questions, but the answer is definitely yes. So if we go to support.desk.com, that's a perfect example of how to find an article. So CSAT, let's try like CSAT changing images. I'm not sure if it's called changing icons. Here we go. So change the smiley images used for CSAT. So there's actually a direct article on how to do that. And in a nutshell, it does involve a little bit of code to go in there and replace the smiley images with your own images. So I guess I can put this into the chat window. So where is my, here, let's do that. I'll put this right here so you will have that email here. All right, and then to kind of show you where to find that, so if you're starting to think of those advanced configurations and changes, what you'll want to do is start looking at the channels segment, and you'll see that under email, you have what are called reply themes. So reply themes is where you'd want to control the look and feel of your site, including the CSAT. So the CSAT is actually embedded within all of the reply themes, and it's shown only when you turn it on, and it's not shown when it's turned off. So if I want to go in there and change any of the look and feel, I can definitely do that. It does have a little bit of coding involved, a little HTML and CSS, but if you're comfortable with that, you can definitely go in there and change the images.
All right, thanks, Barb. Looks like we have another question here. The way I want to set up my desk is so that it organizes by the customer's name, not by the person emailing me. For example, when someone from my customer Tank Connections emails, it goes to a section that's just for them, and then I can choose what machine and enter the serial number for that machine I'm working with. This way we can find all the issues that we've had based on machine and serial number.
Okay, that's a really good question. So it sounds like this could be a job for custom fields. So if we go back to this particular case that I was working on, so let's say I'll grab Brian's case. So if I go to Brian's case, the information that I'm collecting on my custom fields is pretty simple. So the customer type, contact reason, and event type. But if you're looking to track at an issue level, at an issue specific level, the machine type and any other of those specific information, I would highly recommend that you create the corresponding custom fields. Now, you may not necessarily want to use the drop-down, but I would say the drop-down is probably the easiest for capturing tons of different model numbers. So if I have, hundreds of different model numbers, I can actually add them directly into a drop-down. And the great thing is they're actually all type ahead. So I can type ahead. I don't have to scroll down to find the options. Now, I'm not sure if I quite understood the first part of the question, but in terms of organizing your cases by the company versus the customer, I'm not sure if you're referring to the inbox view here. So you can show and hide certain information. So if you don't want to see customer information, but you want to see the company that they're contacting you from, you can definitely add that to the inbox view itself. And remember, when you're actually working on a case, this is the case level information. So like the machines and all the model numbers you can have on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side is where you will see the customer or company level information. So if you specifically wanted to highlight a particular customer because they were VIP or enterprise, you can actually create custom fields on the company or customer level object as well. And the way to do that is going to cases, and then rather than creating a custom field on the case object like we did just now, we can create them on the customer level or the company level. So that will help me, kind of systemically organize my customers and search for them later on, or report on specific company level custom fields. As long as I capture the information, I can use it for searching really easily, but as well as reporting later on. So I hope that answers your question, but if not, feel free to ask a follow-up one.
Okay, thanks, Barb. Looks like we have another one here. How can we see the default values for rules, themes, etc., i.e., how can I see what the default functions are in the system default theme in notification theme?
That's a really great question, and I would say the easiest way is actually to send an email to Desk. So if you want to see what your main configuration looks like, so go into Channels and navigate to the Email section. Under Email, you'll see an inbound email. So this is the same email as, well, yours is going to be different based on your company site, but when you email this email that's in your Desk site, when you interact with it, you will see what the reply theme looks like, and then any changes you want to make to it, you definitely want to see it from the customer's perspective as well. Now, to understand the rule defaults, that is going to probably be a little bit more work, but when I navigate into cases and I go into the rules section, I have all of these different types of rules based on the event. So if I want to see what my default is for inbound rules, meaning when a case first comes in or just comes into Desk, I'll check the inbound rules. So some of the default ones that you saw that I mentioned are, for example, I mean, this one I don't typically use unless I have Twitter. So I can turn this one off. I do definitely want to keep this one on. This reopens cases where a customer replies back. I may or may not need the auto acknowledgement. So basically, you can see the toggle, whether it's on or off. And if you really don't need a rule, you can just simply delete it. So if I just do this, I hit the garbage can, I can delete it. So to see all of the defaults that are in your Desk site when you first open it, I would encourage you to click through and see, like, some of them don't have any rules, some do. The most common rule areas where I usually spend my time are inbound rules, case updated rules, case resolved rules, and as well as time rules. So if I want something to happen not immediately but at a later date. So I would definitely go through and see what is the standard. And if you guys have any questions about that, the PowerPoint has some links to more advanced rules if you want to get more into that. But that's definitely where I would start.
All right, thanks, Barb. Looks like we don't have any more questions. If you guys do have any last-minute questions, feel free to type those in. Maybe we can just talk about a couple of closing remarks before we end here. You guys are asking a lot of really great questions, and for any really specific use case questions or a general question, what we are actually going to do is we're going to send out an invite for a Google Hangout that we'll be hosting. So this will allow you guys to actually bring your use cases, your questions. We'll even give you guys the opportunity to maybe even share your screen so that we can look at your specific Desk sites so we can help you with some of those set of questions. Also, after this webinar, you'll receive a chance to fill out a survey. This survey really helps us to improve this webinar and really to present information that's relevant to you guys that will help you guys in being successful to Desk. All right, let me see if there's any more questions here. Looks like there are not. So with that, we'll go ahead and end today's session. Thank you, Barb, for joining, and thank you, everyone, for your questions. And we are here to help. Thank you.